Morning, one and all. Today I am going to present the topic inquiry approach. The inquiry approach is not a new approach, and this approach has been developed as a result of the discovery learning, which was proposed in 1960s, about 60 years old approach towards a shift in the learning process. It is not the rote learning, but learners have to follow the process of discovery. That's the concept behind this inquiry approach. And there was a teaching model developed by Joseph Schwab for scientific inquiry. So the center of this approach, of course, is inquiry, and specifically inquiry by learners. So in this presentation we will see various aspects of this inquiry approach, especially to science education in terms of its significance, what are the major principles, the steps in inquiry, and what are the different forms of inquiry that we can adopt in our daily teaching. So what is inquiry? So that's the first question. So it's an approach to learning that emphasizes the student's role in learning process. So that's a major shift in inquiry. That shift of emphasis is given to learners. So the learner will become the center of the learning process. Usually teacher telling students what the teacher know or what the subject describes, and students will follow the instructions of the teachers. So here inquiry leads, the learner leads the process, and this process of inquiry has the potential to increase the intellectual engagement and understanding at deeper level. So such kind of an approach or such kind of an activity in which the learner has to be involved in depth. So the maximum activity or maximum potential of the learner is required in this approach or in this model of learning or in this practice of learning. So let us see what are the significance of this inquiry approach. And this approach enables learners to develop skill in questioning, research, and communication. So such skills in questioning, research, and communication shall be developed. Then learners will be able to collaborate outside the classroom, because inquiry will not confined within the classroom. They have to go out, they have to come out from the class, and they have to explore the real situations for conducting inquiry, depending on the nature of the issue or problem that they are going to inquire into. So in such situations they need to consult different people, peers, teachers, or other persons, etc. So there will be a chance to develop skill in collaboration as well. Then learner has an opportunity to solve problem, learn how to solve problem, how to create solutions, and how to tackle real life questions and issues. So that's another significance of inquiry approach. So it is directed towards empowering the learners to understand how to tackle the real questions and issues in real life. They can also participate in creation of ideas and knowledge. That's another significance of inquiry approach. So it's a highly significant as this particular approach help the learner to develop comprehensively and to prepare them for the actual life or real life. Now let us see what are the major principles of inquiry. The first principle is learner at the center of learning process. So we are always uh, discussing about learner-centered education. Learner shall be the center. And if we are ready to follow this particular approach, inquiry approach, then automatically the learner will become the center of the learning process because it is initiated and managed solely by learners. The learning activities revolve around information processing skills. So that's the second principle of inquiry approach. The different activities should be focused around processing of information. So information are of various sorts, and how well we process the information that influence the inquiry as well as the extent of understanding, the concept attainment. So that's the goal of information processing. The last end is concept attainment. So all such activities, learning activities, are centered around information processing skill. Then the role of teachers or instructors is to learn more about their learners rather than the content. So the learner's capacities, learner's weakness, and the process of inquiry based learning. So both these two things the teacher should be more aware of. How the learners are involved in the process of inquiry and what is the actual process behind this inquiry approach, as well as the nature of the learners, their capacities, at what points they require some assistance, what are their background, etc. So the knowledge of the teacher, of the instructor, shall be more on such aspects regarding learner and regarding the process and not about the contents as a conventional teacher. And the evaluation stressed on the development of information processing skill. That's the fourth principle of inquiry. The evaluation, the process of evaluation in inquiry approach is not on the content but on development of the extent of development of information processing skill and conceptual understanding. We have already discussed that the end is the highest end is concept attainment. So the extent of conceptual understanding and the extent of development of information processing skills shall be evaluated instead of content knowledge. So these are the four principles of inquiry, learner at the center. Then information processing skills are highly important. Teachers or instructors concentrated on the characteristics and capabilities of learners as well as the procedure and the process of inquiry and the evaluation of information processing skill and conceptual understanding. So now let us see what are the steps in inquiry. So there are five major steps. The first one is asking questions. So we have to begin inquiry, means some question will arise us. So asking questions. So frame that questions meaningfully and ask it. What are our questions? What we actually need? What we actually inquire or investigate into? And then the second step is the actual investigation, investigating different situations. Then, for example, when we are taking the case of this current pandemic, so we have so many questions, we have so many things to inquire into, and we are investigating into each of this one by one. So, what is the cause of this? Not regarding the pathogen, how it spreads so rapidly. That's the basic question. And whether there will be a recurrence in this particular COVID-19. So whether this will reappear in an already infected and cured person, whether a vaccination is possible. If possible, same vaccine shall be applicable to all people in various nations. So these such kind of questions shall be generated with regard to anything, any simple items in our daily life or with respect to our subject of study. So we have to ask questions, frame those questions properly, and conduct investigation. Then analyzing and describing. As a result of our investigation, we will get data of various sorts. So we have to analyze those data and we have to describe those data in detail. Then only we will understand whether this data is relevant or not, relevant to our, it is capable of answering our question on whether we need more data or these data are irrelevant. We need to collect fresh data or additional data like that. So that analyzing and describing is the third step. And the fourth step is dissemination of findings. So as a result of this analysis and description, we will get some finding or a set of findings. So we have to, those findings should not be kept in shelf, it shall be disseminated properly. The main problem of our researchers is that the research finding, there are so many novel findings in connection with uh, various researches being conducted or conducting in our institutions, educational institutions, other institutions. But most of these findings are kept in shelf. It is not properly disseminated. So that's very important. The dissemination of these findings of our inquiry. Then think about the final step. Think about the information and knowledge obtained. So that's the fifth step in the inquiry process, inquiry approach. So we have find out something, we have disseminated it, and the next step or the last step is for, actually it is meant for further inquiry. So thinking about what we get from the inquiry. what is the knowledge, what knowledge we acquired through the process of that inquiry. So these are the steps in inquiry process, and there are 4 forms or 4 types of inquiry: confirmation inquiry, structured inquiry, guided inquiry, and open inquiry. These are the 4 forms. In the first type, confirmation inquiry, learners are given a question as well as a method to which the end result is already known. So it's just like for practicing inquiry. Say a known item is given to learners. So a learner will work through that, and a method also will be given to them. So they can follow the method and solve the problem or reach up to the answer of the question. So that's confirmation. We have to confirm something. It is an already known fact, so they have to find out. Sunlight is essential for photosynthesis. That's a known uh, fact. So students, learners can be inquired into that particular thing and they can confirm it. So that's confirmation inquiry, because there we have the question, we have the method, and we have the answer. And structured inquiry, the second type of inquiry, much complex than confirmation. Learners are given a method of achieving the result through an investigative process. So a question is there, a method is there, but we don't know the result. So that's the difference. So we have to investigate and find out the result. So it's a structured type of inquiry. Whether learner have to find out the result. So in confirmation, result also is there. We just have to confirm it. And the third type, guided inquiry, learners are only given a question. A question is given, a question is there, and no method is given. So learner has to design a method and to conduct the inquiry and find out the result or answer. So it's more complicated inquiry than the other two. And the fourth type, open inquiry. Learners must form their own question, design investigative method, and then carry out inquiry itself. So the fourth step of the fourth type or the highest type of inquiry. So while passing through the other three, confirmation, structured, and guided inquiry, learner will be capable of conducting inquiry by their own. So they have to suggest some question. They have to suggest appropriate method of investigation, and they have to reach up to the solution or the answer to the question they pose for inquiry. So that's all about inquiry approach. It's a learner-centered, learner-managed approach, especially for science learning. It is highly significant, and we have discussed the major principles of this inquiry approach. Then what are the steps from asking questions to thinking for further inquiry, and the four different forms or different stages we can say as well, from confirmation to structured, then guided to open. So try to practice this approach wherever possible, especially in science education. Because only by practicing something we can inquire into the scope as well as limitation of such approaches. So thanks for watching the presentation. Thank you all.